Imagine if this was the 80s and I was to give you a choice between Charlie Sheen and an air-cooled Porsche, and I asked you that this was one movie combined with the Fast and the Furious plot lines. Yes, today I'm going to do my first ever movie review of one of my all-time favorites, a film that I saw just 2 years back and I fell in love with completely, and now completely given the idea of my obsession with this movie. I'm even planning to buy a DVD to that movie, but of course, it's incredibly rare. If anybody does find this video, you happen to watch this video, please tell me where I can find a good DVD to this movie. Yes, we are talking about 1987's No Man's Land. No Man's Land is a 1987 American crime drama film directed by Peter Werner with a script written by Dick Wolf. These people have been a part of a lot of crime TV shows back then, and they've also produced another couple of TV shows after No Man's Land. The movie story is largely very simple and otherwise very, very different, given the idea that it is rated R. It has a lot of bad language, a lot of murders, and a lot of gun shot sequences. There's a lot of blood in places. The action at times is a little too overboard, but you can still believe it if you like it. The movie story goes something like this. A cop has been shot dead, and one of his friends is basically hiring a rookie to investigate a car robbery gang that's stealing Porsches in Los Angeles, and how this particular cop ends up falling for the fast-paced lifestyle of his target while also falling for his sister forms the rest of the story. This is basically the Fast and the Furious made in the 80s. Believe me, a kind of film that actually worked wonders in 2001 failed to work wonders back in 1987. This movie was a box office flop when it came out, but this film turned out to be a cult classic, largely because of the air-cooled Porsches and Mr. Charlie Sheen. And of course, the visuals, the production values, they all seem very, very grounded and absolutely beautiful to see. I mean, given the idea that that was a time, the 80s was a time when people didn't have this high-end technology, or let's say this razzmatazz kind of gadgets that people actually go around having these days, watching their mobiles and talking to people via Instagram or Snapchat or whatever those apps are. That was a very simple time otherwise. People didn't have mobile phones attached to their bodies like genitals, and they just didn't go around acting like idiots. Strange enough, but true. The entire concept of this movie was later adapted into a lot of other films in the future, namely Point Break and also The Fast and the Furious in 2001. In fact, the entire story of The Fast and the Furious is basically a remake of No Man's Land. The entire film itself, minus the fact that No Man's Land is about German Porsches, The Fast and the Furious is about JDM cars. This was the entire story of the movie, which I feel was absolutely genuine and very, very beautiful to watch, and this is the father of all the similar kind of movies that has come out later on. Now, what's the glam factor about the movie? The glam factor about the movie is pretty simple. 80s air-cooled Porsche cars, which I'm a die-hard fan of, and I'm even willing to own one if I get abroad. Definitely I will someday. And apart from that, I definitely loved the performances, the aesthetic look of LA back in the 80s. The idea that the scenes filmed in the discos were absolutely, beautiful without even having to struggle that much. The movie just gives you a very strange vibe. It takes you to a world that practically existed 40 years ago from today. It takes you to a world where people didn't have mobile phones around them, or people didn't exactly believe technology is this huge kind of thing that will impact people in a very strange way, given the idea that the world we live in and the kind of exposure to the internet we have, the world is never going to be similar. The world we lived in has completely changed, and I cannot imagine a time when films like No Man's Land would release, at least today. We cannot imagine a film like that, because technology has evolved so much, and God, it has made life worse for me. Anyway, as I was saying, the technical aspect of the movie is absolutely brilliantly handled. Anyone who's trying to watch the DVD copy of the movie, good luck on finding a DVD, because you'll never find it. It's absolutely difficult to find a DVD for this movie, and I'm really, really struggling to find a Region 2 MGM made No Man's Land DVD. If anybody's looking at the video today, go down in the comment section and tell me how can I find a DVD for a very cheap price, probably maybe 15 to 20 pounds, given the idea that a lot of MGM DVDs are out of print now. If I can find them, good enough for me. I really need to find a Region 2 MGM No Man's Land DVD, which is a new one, of course, brand new. If anybody has it, do tell me. Anyway, the technical aspect of the film is absolutely brilliant. It takes you to a new, different world altogether, where there was no phones, no technology. People were normal people at the end. The themes of, friendship and the loyalty factor, and how exactly D.V. Sweeney has to make the hard choice is very, very brilliantly handled, and that's something that the Fast and the Furious didn't give us a chance to went up on. The Fast and the Furious was anyway a different movie made for a different audience, for a different generation anyway. No Man's Land is like the father of the Fast and the Furious in many ways, but a father is always a father. You got to give him respect for that, and that's the reason No Man's Land is a little better in that regard. Coming to some of the negatives of the movie, I'll tell you, this movie is incredibly short, and a lot of plot points in the film are actually very ill-paced. I mean, the pacing of those plot points and twists is not exactly correct. For instance, that character called Luz, who basically appears towards the end of the film, he could have appeared a little earlier itself. I didn't exactly see the need of him coming so late into the film. Anyway, that was one point. The second idea being that Lara Harris's character is practically just there for, pleasure. Practically just there for adding the, women factor into the movie. Nothing else and nothing otherwise. The only reason why Lara Harris exists in the movie is because she has to be there. She doesn't have a very substantial role, but she does it far better than what Jordana Brewster did in Fast and the Furious. Of course, no point comparing them because, again, the times were different, the films were different. Anyway, there are some of the limitations of the movie, including the idea that the villain exactly isn't very strong, the idea that the action sequences at times, look very, very old, given the idea that there are places where I see the stuntman's faces very clearly. I can actually make out, okay, he's a stuntman and he's not. But the stunts were actually the biggest highlight of the movie. The biggest highlights of the film. The chase sequence throughout Los Angeles where Charlie and DB are in that Porsche, and how exactly, Martin's people are chasing around in Los Angeles, and that truck sequence is absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Anybody who's watching the sequence right here, you know what I'm talking about. The film overall is a brilliant watch for anybody who's an 80s movie fan or Charlie Sheen fan, or anybody who wants to watch a simple, light-hearted drama film. You can definitely go and watch this movie. I'm not going to spoil the ending for you because the ending is very dark and unexpected, and the cinematography for that particular moment and the BG score was brilliant. Mind-blowing, fucking brilliant. Because that particular scene itself gave me the punch, or the otherwise, feeling about how exactly this film would turn out to be towards the end. The Fast and the Furious took a totally different route, and this movie went totally different, and it's good that it did so. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching my video. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel because it makes me very happy when you do so. We're very close to hitting the 1000 subscriber mark. Anybody who is watching my channel, please help me attain that, because once we hit the 1000 mark, we're going to go big, baby. We're going to really make it big. Anyway, take care, stay safe. Please keep buying movies on physical media. That's the best way you can preserve films otherwise for a long term. Stay safe, bye-bye, and Godspeed.